Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're taking a completely different approach to how you view the markets. We're going to ditch that emotional gambling mindset and transition you right into elite clinical execution. And we'll be doing it using a highly focused, tactical approach. We're going to break down how to actually master your own neural edge.
Let's be real for a second. I want to cut right through that frustration you feel when staring at the charts. The absolute truth is, the market isn't actually chaotic. Your brain is just tuned to the wrong frequency. Ask yourself right now, and be honest, when you click buy or sell, are you trading a statistically undeniable edge, or are you just chasing a dopamine hit? It's a tough question, but it's the absolute foundation of everything we're going to cover today.
Here's the harsh reality. Most traders lose. And they lose because they're literally drowning in market noise. It's just raw, unfiltered data that completely overwhelms the senses. But today, we're going to look at the blueprint for biologically rewiring your neural pathways so you can surgically filter out those distractions. By the end of this explainer, you'll know exactly how to train your brain to filter price action just like a high-frequency algorithm.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the architecture of market noise, and understand this AI-driven algorithmic environment.
Every single day, there's a literal war happening on your screens. On one side, you've got these retail visual traps. The modern AI-driven environment intentionally creates these visual traps specifically to trigger retail liquidity. They want you to react impulsively. On the flip side, we have institutional footprints. These are the clear, statistically undeniable data points of big money. Your goal here isn't to outsmart the AI. It's to stop falling for the visual traps and only track the footprints.
Now, why do we fall for these traps in the first place? Well, it comes down to your biological antagonist, selective perception. In the wild, selective perception is a brilliant biological survival mechanism. But in trading, it's actively working against your success. It tricks you into seeing patterns that aren't actually there just because you really want to be in a trade. This mechanism absolutely must be manually overwritten if you want to stop overtrading and prevent complete emotional hijacking. So now that we know the problem is deep-rooted in our biology, let's look at the fix.
Moving on to Section 2, rewiring your neural pathways. Let's see how we go from external chaos to internal clinical filters.
You basically need to overhaul how your brain processes information. Right now, you're likely emotionally reacting to all that external market noise. We need to shift that. We need you relying entirely on internal cognitive filters. These filters are what allow you to smoothly categorize raw price action into high-yield zones, letting you manually block out the psychological distractions that constantly trip up other retail traders.
Okay, so how do we actually build these filters? It's all about crossing a very specific threshold by establishing a strict triple confluence checklist. First, you define that threshold. Second, you pinpoint specific confluence triggers. Maybe it's a massive volume spike hitting a key resistance level or a clear shift in momentum confirming a trend. And third, you actively train your brain to completely ignore any setup that lacks these triggers. Seriously, if it doesn't meet the criteria, it physically shouldn't exist to you.
Now this is where the biology gets super fascinating. How do you habituate the brain faster? You accelerate the myelination of your neural pathways. Myelin is essentially the insulation around your nerves that lets impulses fire quickly and efficiently. And you can rapidly build this up for pattern recognition by doing synthetic backtesting sessions. Think of it like doing reps in the gym, but for your visual cortex. You're speeding up your pattern identification until it becomes completely second nature.
Which brings us to Section 3, clinical sensory gating and executing the cognitive gatekeeper checklist.
Let's get into the execution phase. We're moving from theory to physical action here. This is the step-by-step cognitive gatekeeper checklist you need to deploy. Step 1. Wait patiently for your primary setup to be identified based on your specific influences. Step 2. Run your cognitive gatekeeper checklist to verify the data. And Step 3. Use this rigid, structured process to physically block emotional hijacking during live chaotic volatility. You're not guessing anymore, you're strictly validating.
Listen, if you only take away one single thing from this explainer today, please let it be this non-negotiable rule. Ignore minor fluctuations once a primary setup is identified. Once your setup is locked in and your edge is undeniable, you have to clinically ignore all the chaotic, meaningless price movement happening between your entry and your target. Just tune it out.
So, how do you maintain that ironclad focus? You have to isolate true institutional liquidity grabs from the random everyday chop. And you do this by focusing exclusively on price displacement and constantly monitoring volume profile shifts.
These are the undeniable statistical footprints of big money we talked about earlier. Literally everything else is just noise designed to shake you out of your position. But hey, there's a catch, right? How do you actually survive the agonizing boredom of just sitting there, waiting for these perfect setups?
All right, Section 4, Hacking the Reward System. We're going to rewire those dopamine loops.
To survive that agonizing boredom, we've got to trigger a massive dopamine shift in your brain. Let's face it, most traders are low-key addicted to the thrill of the trade, the emotional gambling, the rush of clicking buttons. We need to rewire your reward center so it actually craves clinical avoidance. You need to find a deep, almost elite level of satisfaction not from making a trade, but from preserving your capital and executing perfect discipline.
And you know what? You can actually gamify this discipline. Think about the metrics you track. Sure, you've got your winning, high-probability setups, but equally important is a metric for successfully tracking the bad trades that you missed. By actively logging the terrible, impulsive trades you wanted to take but stopped yourself from taking, you visually prove to your brain that doing absolutely nothing is a measurable, highly profitable success metric. It is literally equal in value to striking a winning setup.
Let's bring it all together in Section 5, Scaling the Selective Edge, focusing on long-term mastery and cognitive compounding. As you start mastering this clinical execution, something pretty incredible happens. Your edge isn't just about percentage returns anymore. The effect of your refined, highly selective perception compounds powerfully as you scale up to larger account sizes. The exact same clinical process that protects a tiny account is going to protect and grow a massive institutional-size account. The mechanics in your brain do not change, only the leverage does.
Now, to keep this biological edge razor sharp as you scale up, the secret isn't adding more complex strategies. Nope. Instead, you integrate real-time sentiment analysis tools, but you use them strictly as secondary filters. Their entire purpose is just to statistically validate what your finely tuned visual cortex is already seeing right there on the charts.
To make all of this highly actionable for you, here's a simple, daily, 10-minute mental calibration routine to do right before the trading session begins. Minutes 1 to 3, completely clear your mental slate of all outside biases. Minutes 4 to 7, strictly review your triple confluence rules. And finally, minutes 8 to 10, visualize your highest probability setups to actively prime your visual cortex for pattern recognition.
We've covered a lot today: the biological traps, the neural rewiring, and the clinical gating you need to actually pull this off. So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder the very next time you pull up your charts. Are you going to continue gambling in the noise, constantly falling for visual traps, or are you going to choose to manually override your biology and execute with the clinical precision of an institution? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.